What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video, and we got a pretty big video today as I am giving out my updated top 15 NHL drafted prospects. When looking at this is under the age of 25 and under 25 NHL games, so they're still called, they're eligible. And my full top 50 over on Instagram starting on Monday, probably Labor Day. But today we are doing the top 15, and I'm not gonna lie, this was like freaking impossible. When looking at it, I cannot remember a time that I've done a list like this, and probably like even just as an NHL fan from 4 through 15, it is truly up in the air. We're going to start with 1. We're going to go do the top 3, which I think everybody can kind of assume what it probably is going to be, or at least the 3 players. But yeah, the 4 through 15 is so goddamn close right now in the NHL, where I could definitely see you saying, like, the player that I have 5, you have at 14. The player that I have at 13, you have at 6. Like, it is very much up in the air. I even shuffled. I didn't do, like, massive changes, but I shuffled guys here and there when I was making this list a couple spots. So yeah, we are going to dive into it. This is based on what I think, pretty self-explanatory, but how good of NHLers I think that they're going to be. Obviously not right now, considering a 2023 draftee I hope is better than a 2025 draftee. But yeah, that's criteria. Under 25 games, under the age of 25. Let's get into it. And up first, I am going with Ivan Demidov. I am not going with Matthew Schaefer. I was actually surprised at a lot of outlets. I think Daily Faceoff had Matthew Schaefer number 1. I think The Athletic might have had him number 1. I am still going with Ivan Demidov, just considering the sample size is much bigger. The resume is a little bit more impressive, considering the fact this guy was 2 points per game in the MHL in his draft year. In the KHL, put up 49 points in 65 games, and actually had a higher points per 60 than Michkov. Michkov was on a worse team and just played more. So yeah, we saw Matvei Michkov make the jump to, not saying they're the same players, but we saw Matvei Michkov dominate the MHL, dominate the KHL. Now already put up like 65-point pace in the NHL. I think Ivan Demidov, especially with his playmaking ability, it is just so, the way that he processes the game and the skills that he has to follow through on those plays is so impressive. He is just a freakishly skilled player, and there's a reason why he's plus 230. I was checking out FanDuel, but he was plus 230 to win the Calder, and the next closest guy next year is plus 1100. So I think in his prime, he's going to be a 90 to 100 point guy. He is a special player, and potentially the guy that is going to make the Montreal Canadiens a contender for a very long time. At number 2, though, I got Matthew Schaefer. He was my number 1 prospect in the 2025 NHL draft. I had him there back in like December. I didn't just switch up once the New York Islanders drafted him. But yeah, when you're talking about elite traits, his skating is really just off the charts. One of the best skating defenseman prospects we have ever seen. And we've seen guys at the NHL like Jake Sanderson, Miro Heiskanen absolutely thrive as a result of that elite skating trait. 6'2". Yes, the sample size is not that large, considering he only played like 3 months that season. He dominated Hlinka Gretzky Cup, dominated the CHL U.S. National Team Development Program game, World Juniors. He was awesome. And yeah, he just has such a translatable, such a crucial skill in skating, where I expect him to at least be a very solid 50-ish point two-way defenseman. The way that he's able to generate offense with that skating ability, get up in the rush, is so intriguing and something that my Islanders badly need. At number 3, Michael Misa, closing out our top 3. I'm sure some of you guys probably are just going to skip through this, and I wouldn't blame you. It is a clear top 3, and Michael Misa is locked in at that number 3 spot. When looking at him in his draft year, -1, we thought, is this guy kind of plateauing after a great exceptional status year? Only had 75 points in 67 games. It's still crazy, don't get me wrong. But then this year, he proves that, no, that season was a fluke. This is what I am. 62 goals, 72 assists, 134 points. The most points in a draft year in the OHL since Patrick Kane. 5th most points in a single season since 2000 in the OHL. So yeah, he is just a very good prospect overall. He doesn't have that elite trait like a playmaking of Ivan Demidov, like a Matthew Schaefer skating, but he just does everything at an extremely high level, where I can see that you think that he has a higher floor than both of those players. And I think, especially, well, it's kind of tough because in San Jose, he's going to be the second line center, but if he was a first line center, he'd be going for 85, 90 points a season. And in San Jose, he's probably still going to be point per game, even in that second line center role, because San Jose is building it right. At number 4, this is where the list really starts, and I'm sticking with the guy that I was very high on in his draft year. I had him as my number 4 prospect, number 1 defenseman, that being Zane Parekh. We're looking at him in his draft year, 96 points, which is like the most in the OHL by a defenseman of like the 21st century. How does he follow that up? He has 107 points in 61 games. Mind you, in his draft year, like that was when Michael Misa had his down year. Michael Misa this year was awesome alongside him, but the way that he patrols the blue line, and also a much needed right-handed defenseman, or much rare right-handed defenseman, the way that he is able to patrol the blue line, it is kind of Cale Makar-ish, and he has a Cale Makar kind of shot, considering he's been scoring like 30-ish goals the last 2 years in the OHL. I think his defense is overly hidden. I'm not calling him Cale Makar 2.0, but when you just talk about those elite offensive traits, I think he has the best offensive toolkit among any defenseman prospect right now in the NHL. At number 5, I'm going to be going with Porter Martone, which if you follow my page, you might be saying, didn't you have Frundell over Martone? I've just watched more Martone, and Martone continued to grow on me throughout the draft cycle to now that I do have Martone. I still have Frundell. Frundell is going to be very soon in this. But Porter Martone, 6'3", such an elite playmaker and passer. And I think hopefully the skating can develop. If the skating's even league average with that playmaking and size, he has all the tools to potentially be a mid-80s point guy, especially going to Philadelphia playing with Matvei Michkov. That could be damn special on a power play. And yeah, this year, 98 points in 57 games. The elite playmaking trait is why he checks in at number 5. At number 6, Anton Frundell, who has another extremely elite trait, that being shot, one of the most important traits that a forward could have, considering the fact that he had 25 points in 29 games this year in the second-tier Swedish league, which was more productive than guys like William Nylander, David Pastrnak. Those guys turned out pretty good. He's 6'1", 200 pounds, already proved it against grown men. And again, that shot is very, very special. And I think he has legit 35, 40 goal potential. There is some concerns about his conditioning, about his overall, he's a little bit overweight right now, if I'm just going to put it bluntly, but I think that they're going to figure that out once he gets over to Chicago. At number 7, sticking with the Swedes, Axel Sandin Palika. When looking at him, he's had like the most linear progression, at least offensively, that you could ask for. Dominated Swedish juniors, then goes to the SHL, put up around a half a point per game, just under half a point per game. And this year, 0.65 points per game at 19 years old. The NHL progression has been very impressive. He is a little bit undersized, but similar to a Zane Parekh, and he has an even better shot, I'd probably say, than a Zane Parekh. He has proven it against grown men in Sweden, and I think he has all the makings to be the top power play defenseman in Detroit. They're pretty set on the right side between him and Moritz Seider. At number 8, I'm going to go with Ryan Leonard. Maybe he has a top 4 floor among prospects right now, just because he is an absolute dog two-way guy that's willing to get into the greasy areas. His playmaking maybe needs a little bit of work, but he has a pretty damn good shot. And as a result, I think based on what he's done at every single level, U.S. National Team Development Program, Boston College, World Juniors, I think he's probably going to be a solid 30-30 guy. I'm just very confident that his game will translate to the NHL level. And although the production wasn't off the charts, it was actually pretty bad once he made the jump to the NHL, I still think he looked pretty good. Maybe doesn't have the ceiling of the guys within the top 7, but again, the floor is very intriguing for Ryan Leonard, and the reason why he went 8th overall in the loaded 2023 draft. At 9th overall, Alexander Nikishin has been dominating in Russia. He is going to be 24 years old in October, I believe, so he's definitely on the older side. But yeah, he's been dominating Russia, won back-to-back Defenseman of the Year, and the only reason why his points per game this year dropped was because Tony DeAngelo was playing in Russia for like the first half of the season. 6'4", skates very well, very good slap shot. I think in Carolina, he's going to have to turn into their top offensive defenseman now that Brett Burns is out of there. Nikishin and Scott Morrow. They also traded Scott Morrow. Nikishin has all the makings to potentially be a very, very special player with his build and with his skill. Another big left-handed defenseman at number 10. I'm going with Sam Dickinson, 6'3", also a very, very good skater. His skating really pops off when you watch him on film. A consensus top 7 to 12 guy in the 2024 draft. This year for the London Knights, he had a solid draft year, but this year for the London Knights, 91 points in 55 games, second in the OHL, only behind Zane Parekh. They had a really bad World Juniors, don't get me wrong, but I'm going to go with the overall sample size. I know they did also kind of play on a super team in London, but he was their best player this season. He's awesome to watch, and I think he easily could end up being the number one defenseman, a top 13 to 20 defensemen in the NHL, just because the physical tools are so goddamn intriguing. With Sam Dickinson, definitely needs to work on processing the game a little bit and maybe some higher IQ. But at this point, I think you got to have him within the top 12 of your prospects just because how great his draft year +1 was. Number 11, I got Berkeley Cadden. I was very high on him in his draft year. He was my number 6 guy, I think, after Parekh and Leshinov. And yeah, he had an amazing draft year. He had 116 points, which is one of the best draft years in the WHL of the last 20 years. And he followed it up by having 109 points in 57 games. Him and Andrew Crystal, once Crystal got traded to the Spokane Chiefs, were one of the best offensive WHL duos ever. And yeah, I just think that he follows that mold of a Logan Cooley, a Jack Hughes, a little bit undersized, but just such an elite skater. And he's going to flourish in transition in the NHL. And he was able to weave through tight spaces. He definitely needs to put on some weight. He's only 5'10", 170 pounds. And I understand if you have some apprehension about that. But much like those two guys that I referenced, not saying he's that quality of prospect, obviously, but I think the skill and the speed is just far too high for this guy to not develop into at least a 65-ish point guy at the next level. And if he hits, he's really going to hit. Next up, Zeev Boyum at number 12. Another great season at Denver this season after having an all-time freshman season. You see a little bit of Quinn Hughes slipperiness at the blue line in terms of being able to control possession. I do have some question marks about his defending, and he is a little bit on the undersized at 5'11", 6 foot. But yeah, he has all the makings of a top pair offensive defenseman. I am more of a fan of a guy like Zane Parekh, but still, Z Boyum's going to be awesome, especially alongside a guy like Brock Faber on a potential top pair. The future is very bright in Minnesota. At number 13, Caleb Denoyer. He was my number 6 prospect in the 2025 draft. He was viewed as a consensus top 5 to 8 guy, and he just has a very high floor considering he's a very good two-way player. Again, maybe not the ceiling of some guys that are going to be below him, but I just really trust his game at the next level, and especially he's going to such a great developmental spot like Utah, and doesn't have to be the number 1 center in Utah. He can just be that consistent 65-ish point second line center. And yeah, this year, 80 points in 54 games in the QMJHL helped get them to the Memorial Cup. He was damn good. Caleb Denoyer is a guy that I'm probably a little bit higher on than others. At number 14, James Hagans. And again, you can go back, look at my stuff. I had him number 6 on my 2025 board. This isn't him not going to the Islanders, and then I slide him down. I've been consistent on this. He has the potential to for sure be a number 1 center. There are some cracks in his game. There are some concerns in terms of once the pressure really cranks up and the physicality cranks up, he does tend to rush some decisions. But yeah, the hands are elite, very good skater, very smooth in transition. And I think playing with the David Pastrnak is definitely going to help him in 2 to 3 years. And he should be probably a low-end number 1 center, high-end second-line center. The Boston Bruins got a great guy at 7th overall. I'm just not quite as high on him as maybe some other guys, especially some guys in the 2025 draft. But Hagans is still definitely no doubt top 16 to 18 prospect, and I have him at number 14. And then to finish it off at number 15, Artem Leshinov. I wasn't always the biggest Artem Leshinov guy in his draft year. I had him 6th, and a lot of people had him 3 to 5. Still a very good prospect. Played in the AHL this year. The numbers weren't that impressive offensively, but that was in part because Kevin Korchinski was down there kind of being that number 1 offensive defenseman. He had 22 points in 52 games. You would have liked to see a little bit more, but yeah, he just has a very projectable kind of game. 6'2", 6'3", right-handed defenseman, does everything at an above average to good level. I think he's going to just be a solid 45-ish point guy for the Chicago Blackhawks. They're set in terms of their right-handed defense. Sam Renzel is going to be a top 30 prospect, most likely for me on my list. So they have him and Leshinov going forward, or Leshinov and Renzel. They're set on the right side, and Leshinov, again, with this at 15, easily, I don't think you're wrong if you have him number 9. All of these guys are absolute studs. James Hagans, if you have him 6, I wouldn't call you crazy, but that is my personal list. Let's run through it again. Ivan Demidov, Matthew Schaefer, Michael Misa, Zane Parekh, number 4, Porter Marteau, number 5, Anton Frundell, number 6, Axel Sandin Pellikka, Pelika, number 7, Ryan Leonard, number 8, Nikishin, number 9, Sam Dickinson, number 10, Berkeley Cannon, number 11, Zeev Boyum, number 12, Denoyer, number 13, Hagens, number 14, and Leshinov, number 15. In terms of some honorable mentions, I think that it kind of is 4 through 15. I kind of have locked up. But after that, Cole Hudson, Beckett Seneca, Caden Lindstrom if he gets healthy, Bradley Nadeau dominated the AHL. I'm still very high on Constantinius, Sam Renzel that we talked about. Carter Bear was my number 7 prospect in the 2025 draft. So those are just some honorable mentions that you're going to see like 16 through 23. But yeah, 4 through 15, very, very damn close. I do think it drops off a little bit after that. But let me know in the comments, what do you think about this list? Who would you move up? Who would you move down? I'm sure a lot of you guys are going to be having changes to this list, and I definitely understand where you're coming from. I'll be seeing you in the next one. Peace.